this isn't over. I plan on leaving a very sternly worded comment on the
YouTube comments.
and it is going to be long, weird, and rambling.
So over a year ago, I talked about this streaming service called Netflix. The reason I talked about it was because for the longest time, it seemed like the best place you could go to if you had an animated show that you wanted to pitch. They would just take whatever you pitched to them and put it on their service.
Netflix, you're greenlit.
And people would flock to the service just to watch the show. Then last year in 2022, things changed. The prices kept increasing, they cracked down on password sharing, and of course, they started canceling shows. Animated shows.
Get ready, everybody. He's about to do something stupid.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, gentlemen, but you seem to have me confused with a character in a fictional show. Now, if you'll excuse me, my fondue is just about...
There goes Albany.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs!
Phone was canceled, Inside Job was canceled, Paranormal Park was canceled. Netflix was starting to run its service the same way that Nickelodeon does. You see, Nickelodeon has this bad track record of greenlighting shows only to pretty much cancel them right away if they don't immediately hit those SpongeBob numbers. And Netflix is pretty much the same way now. Unless you're as successful as, say, Arcane, then your show's probably not going to last very long. And it doesn't just stop at cancellation. Even before the purge happened, animated shows were being neutered drastically, which we probably should have seen as foreshadowing for how Netflix was going to start running its service. The Tale of Arcadia series, Wizards for example, wasn't supposed to be only 10 episodes long. It was supposed to be 20. The main character Duxie was even supposed to have a girlfriend who would later become one of the main characters, but due to Netflix cutting the budget, the show had to be massively cut down and the character borderline removed entirely. Then they had to end the show with that god-awful movie. Man, I really gotta talk about that movie someday. It's really that bad. And sadly, I think Kid Cosmic was also a victim of this systematic cutting down. Seasons 2 and 3 are significantly different to Season 1 in this regard, mainly for the fact that both seasons are just so tethered together the way they are. Season 1 almost feels like its own thing entirely. You could honestly stop watching Kid Cosmic Season 1 right at the point where they give the stones of power back to their rightful owners, and honestly, you'd be perfectly satisfied. It was a great story with wonderful characters and a great message about what real heroes are about. But I already made a video about that season, so we're ignoring it and pressing on to Seasons 2 and 3. Like I said, Seasons 2 and 3 are so closely tethered together that it doesn't really make much sense to make two separate videos about them. They're pretty much the same season, only separated by a 5-month release. It's kind of like BoJack Horseman's last season, which was split into 2 separate parts, only not called the final season, even though it is the final season. I don't know, TV shows are weird when it comes to stuff like that. Where Season 2 ends, Season 3 picks up immediately afterwards in a way that you never would have expected. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's start with Season 2 and how Kid is no longer the main character.
You look like shit, man. Here, have another beer. This'll make you feel better.
So Season 2 takes a very interesting turn of direction. In my Season 1 video, I chose not to spoil the ending of that season because I really wanted to encourage you guys to go watch the show yourselves. Plus, you guys have had over a year to check it out, so if you're spoiled, that's entirely your fault. Also, I just gave you a spoiler warning, so you still can't get mad at me. So, in the final season of Episode 1, it turned out that the Stones of Power were actually the remnants of the owner's destroyed planets. Each stone is based on the owner's unique ability that which the planet gave them, and now they are the sole survivors of their destroyed planets. It's also revealed that what destroyed their planet was Erodius, the planet killer. So the survivors came to Earth to reclaim their stones, not for their power, but to remember the home that they've lost. It's a pretty cool twist that, again, helps tie into the whole heroes don't form a fist, they extend a hand message. But anyway, the season ended with them leaving Earth to go and fight Erodius so that he can't destroy any more worlds. But then one of the survivors, Queen Jean, the one who makes portals, returns to Earth broken and defeated, revealing that all the others died. Yeah. They died. Like, straight up, they're dead. They were the last survivors of the race, and now their races are gone forever. There's no pulling the rug out from under us or anything. They don't suddenly show up as prisoners of Erodius or anything. No, they're straight up dead. That's what I fucking love about this show, man. It's got balls bigger than the ones you see swinging from the back of a Ram truck. So Queen Jean asks Kid Cosmic and his team to help stop Herodias, and she then teleports them all into space, Diner included. And this is where the season begins. It's unknown just how much time has passed between seasons 1 and 2, most likely about a month or two, but either way, now the Diner is serving aliens all across the galaxy, with Kid becoming the delivery boy, Papa G organizing parking, Rosa being big, I guess, she's only like 4, Tuna Sandwich still being the best damn pussy he can be, and Joe still being a waitress. And boy does she hate it. So in the last season, it was revealed that there are actually a total of 13 Stones of Power, all because of Herodias destroying planets, and Kid wants to go and find them. And even though Joe wants to as well, she feels obligated to stay and help her mom. Fortunately for both of them, however, there's another threat coming that's arguably worse than Herodias: fanboys.
And I'm a real fan.
In comes Phantos the Amasser. And yes, he's clearly a Thanos parody, which, again, as I said in my last video, fits well with the show since it's all a cool deconstruction of the typical comic book tropes anyway. Not to mention, despite the name and look, Phantos is actually nothing like Thanos at all, at least in terms of personality. If anything, he actually reminds me of the Spot from Across the Spider-Verse, in that in the beginning, he's a pathetic man-child who's easily defeated by our main characters just because he himself is pretty incompetent. But as the show carries on and he obtains more power, he grows into a genuinely menacing and dangerous threat who our heroes struggle to defeat. So Phantos reveals that he wants the Stones of Power, not because he wants to rule the galaxy or anything, because it'd be too much hard work, which, you know, relatable, but simply as collectibles of Herodias, who he is a die-hard fan of. Why? He just likes evil. That's all there is to it, and it works. Like with Chuck from the last season, it's refreshing to see a villain who's just evil because he wants to be. No dramatic backstory or anything. He's just evil, and it's a lot of fun. He's like a far more comical version of Garu from One Punch Man Season 2, if you think about it. Speaking of Chuck, just gonna get this out of the way now that we're talking about him, these last 2 seasons did him so dirty. Remember how much fun he was in Season 1? Remember how he was a fun and pretty menacing villain himself? Like when he used Kid's tragic past against him in order to call his great leader to Earth so he could obtain the Stones of Power himself? He then went through this nice redemption arc and switched sides after learning that his great leader was a little bitch. He actually became Kid's friend and even risked his own life to save Kids at one point. He's no Zuko by any means, but it still felt very natural with how much time he spent with the others, learning about Kid through his comic books, being betrayed by the one he looked up to, and later finding a new home on Earth. It was really nice.
Chuck, what are you doing here?
Chuck, sorry. Great leader.
Everything's come full circle, baby.
So why in dick's fuck is he just a dishwasher now? He's barely even in the show anymore. He's got like a total of 10 lines for both this season and the next. He's become worthless. He doesn't do anything now. He gets a little more screen time in Season 3 maybe, but not much. Like, how did y'all take one of the best characters from last season and then practically throw him away? I'm mad now.
No, it's not fair.
Chuck, take the pen away.
I get there's new characters we gotta introduce and flesh out, and I guess you can argue that Chuck got his arc already, so he doesn't need a new one. Not saying he needs a new one, but still, you could have given him at least some fun moments or something. I don't care about this motorcycle chick or those 2 cooks in the kitchen. Give more screen time to Chuck, damn it. Oh wait, you can't because the show's over. Thanks!
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So Kid is actually excited to be kidnapped by a supervillain who planned this whole thing and is also much older than him.
Mo's Oasis like no other place in space is.
I'd like to add something to my order, please. 1 kid!
So now Joe and the others are forced to go save him. All jokes aside, this is a pretty funny scene where he calls the diner only to get putting on hold because they're too busy. As someone who's worked that life before, that is too damn relatable. So after defeating Phantos, they discover 4 new Stones of Power. The power of multi-arms, invisibility, Luffy powers, and slime. But in the process, they end up losing the telekinesis stone that Kid had, replacing it with the slime one. Despite the victory though, Joe blames herself for losing the telekinesis stone, and on top of that, now has a map that will lead to the other stones. This is where the show takes a really interesting direction that I wasn't expecting. You see, now Joe is the main character of the show. In a show called Kid Cosmic of all things. Okay. Look, I'll give Craig and his team credit where it's due. It's a very ambitious idea. But Joe honestly wasn't really that special in the first season. I liked her, she was fine, just nothing amazing. Just the typical big sister-like character who served as the voice of reason for the team. She had some good jokes and moments here and there in season 1, but comparatively, she was easily the weakest character in the group. Honestly, I remember the mom more than Jo herself, and that's only because of her unconditional love for her diner with things like her plaque and the crema. But now, Jo is suddenly the main character. She was made the honorary leader of the team as Kid and Rosa are too young, Papa G is too old, and Tuna Sandwich is a cat. So yeah, out of all of them, she's the best candidate. Lord help them all. So to help her with her mission that she can no longer put off, she goes to Queen Jean to get some advice. Also, side note, that is indeed the legendary Cree Summer voicing her. Once again, I really respect the fact that Craig uses actual voice actors in his shows. It's honestly been a little while since I've heard Cree's voice, and it's wonderful to hear again. So Queen Jean decides to help Jo with her leadership problems and gives her some simple rules.
First, take risks. Defy the odds.
Okay, that's not bad advice.
Second, stop taking orders and start giving orders. Third, don't let anyone stand in your way.
Again, pretty solid advice.
Last, when it comes to the greater good, do whatever it takes, no matter the cost.
Oh my god, she's a ruthless monster who doesn't care about her own people and is more than willing to throw them away in order to achieve victory, isn't she?
A true leader never asks their team what they want to do. They do what you tell them to do. You call this living up to my legacy? Frozen in fear?
She's putting herself in danger for absolutely no reason. Jean, did you know about this?
Know about it? I encouraged it.
You're a bitch! You're a bitch! You're a bitch!
Huh. So the last survivor of Herodias is actually kind of a bitch. Cool! So Jo takes her advice to heart and for the next few episodes begins to put them into practice. Meanwhile, in the background, Jo's mom Flo, who gets the power of extra arms to help with the restaurant, is trying to help her as well, only to be sidelined by Queen Jean. This leads to a rather interesting triangle between the three of them, with both Jean and Flo competing over what's best for Jo. All at the same time, Jo is just trying to lead the team and save the universe. Yeah, I think I actually really like Jo now. Like I said earlier, Jo wasn't anything amazing in season 1. She was just the voice of reason and not much else. I liked her fine, but she was just a touch flat for my liking. But man, if I had known the kind of arc she was going to get in this season, I would have given her way more credit in the beginning. Going from the simple voice of reason to this gullible yet optimistic leader was a great change. The first few episodes showcase this wonderfully with how Jo keeps following the advice of Jean to often mixed results. Sometimes it leads to disaster like in episodes 2 and 3, but other times actually working out in episodes 4 and 5. Again, showcasing that she grows steadily throughout the show instead of just miraculously in one episode. I like that. In episode 2, our heroes find this pyramid which holds the stone of super speed. This episode actually reminds me of the box from Star Wars The Clone Wars, which by the way is one of the best episodes of the entire show. This pyramid has all these cool traps and puzzles that Jo rushes through in order to try and achieve victory. Like with rule number 1, she takes risk to defy the odds, rather than simply listening to the puzzle and trying to figure things out the easy way. The episode has a good message as well about doing things the way they need to be done, and taking shortcuts can often lead to bad things. Then in episode 3, the heroes go to this alien gala where this twin-headed mafia boss has 2 of the stones of fire and ice. They actually make a great plan and manage to get the stones easily. However, after some instruction from Queen Jean, Jo decides to stop taking orders and start giving them, and tells the group to stay at the party in order to celebrate, despite nobody wanting to stay. Kid tells her it's a bad idea to stay as they have the stones and it's best to go while the getting is good. But Jo doesn't listen to him because, well, she's the leader, she shouldn't have to. And of course, they end up getting caught. Phantos appears to steal the stones from the twins, only for him to call out the heroes in front of everyone, leading to them getting captured. However, before they're thrown to space, Herodias makes its first appearance to the heroes. And here, it's revealed that Herodias is actually a planet.
What do we do, Jo?
Leave the children! Save yourself!
Again, sticking to the maturity, we watch as Herodias destroys an entire planet right before our very eyes. And this is the moment where Phantos actually becomes the saving grace for this idea. You see, I'm gonna level with you guys here. Force of nature threats like Herodias are honestly kind of boring if you ask me. Not saying they can't work at all, but are you honestly going to tell me those cloud things from Raya and the Last Dragon or Man from Bambi are compelling villains in their own right? Those things are more about the concept surrounding them as opposed to being fun and interesting villains in their own right. Again, it's kind of like Jenner from The Secret of Nim or the director from Nimona. It serves as a threat, sure, but it's just a giant rock in space. There's nothing to it. It moves super slowly, every Everyone knows about it already, so it'd be pretty easy to keep track of. Sure, it's destructive, but it's also very easy to avoid if you wanted to. Yeah, there's a twist about Herodias that I'll get to later, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's still not a character. So let me just say this with all of my chest. Thank God for Phantos. Having this guy with tons of personality follow this thing around and later on guide it to its next target is the perfect addition. It is exactly what Herodias needs to become a far more viable threat. And ironically, it's not even because of Herodias itself. Phantos, in a twist of irony, actually steals the role of the main threat away from Herodias, while at the same time boasting about how great Herodias is. It's a great, hilarious, and genuinely menacing dynamic that makes Herodias all the more memorable when it's just a normal force of nature, and I love it for that. Queen Jean snaps at Joe for freezing the way that she did, despite the fact that they still managed to get the stones in the end. And even though it was because Joe was just following her instructions to begin with, it still doesn't change the fact that Joe still froze. Obviously, though, Queen Jean is being too harsh and her criticism unfair considering that she lost to Herodias herself and never bothered to even mention that Herodias was an actual planet itself. But regardless of that, it's enough to make Joe reevaluate her status as leader of the team. So, obviously the right choice is to join an intergalactic fighting ring and face off against its reigning champion, who also happens to have a stone of power. Wow, that was convenient as fuck, ain't it? So Joe joins an intergalactic fighting tournament, but the others try to bring her back so she won't get hurt. But following rule number 3, she surprisingly defeats them all, either through them just being incompetent, or because of Joe's actual talent with her abilities. Or in Tuna Sandwich's case, he just gives up.
Slavery is as old as time, and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
So Joe surprisingly manages to defeat the champion named Krosh, and obtains her Stone of Power, which is that of pain absorption. So basically that no move from My Hero Academia Season 1. So Joe enlists Krosh to help get the team ready to fight Herodias, but as expected, the team all suck. They completely fail every test that both Krosh and Joe give them, and they instead opt to help some refugees whose planet was just destroyed by Herodias. This ties back to the lesson that Season 1 taught that heroes help, not hurt, and Flo tries to get Joe to remember that lesson.
You're right, Mom. No reason to fight. We can just save the galaxy by joining hands and offering Herodias a warm helping of Flo's famous Volgot pie.
Johanna, I know this isn't you talking.
Bitch, I hope the fuck you do!
3 cheers for helping! Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray! Don't worry, Joe. We'll get right back to the training as soon as this is done.
Damn, Joe. Even Kid remembers that lesson, and he's like 7. What's your excuse? Oh yeah, that's right. You have a raving bitch nagging in your ear. Honestly, somebody should shut her up.
Wait, are you okay? What's happening? What do we do? What do we do? Sean!
And once again, Phantos proves he's the best character in the show. So Joe and Krosh use the stones they got to defeat Phantos and send him packing, resulting in the team having all 13 stones. So Joe decides it would be best for the team for only her and Krosh to use them. Following rule number 4, huh? Do whatever it takes, no matter the cost.
Calm down.
How could you do this?
I told you.
No, tell me really why.
Because...
Why?
I'm trying to...
Why?
Listen for a sec.
Tell me!
Because you suck!
Hey, doesn't this feel kind of familiar? Almost like we saw something like this in the last season, where the supposed leader of the team took all the stones for themselves in order to prove themselves to everyone else. Okay, I know it sounds like they're just repeating themselves, but I assure you they're not. This is what I meant when I said I actually really like Joe now, because now she has actual depth. In the beginning of the show, Joe didn't want to be a simple waitress. She wanted to go out and see the world and make something of herself. She wanted to go to Boise, Idaho, for crying out loud, which is the real reason why she helped Kid with superhero stuff in the first season. Because if the world ended, then all she would have ever been was
just a waitress.
And the really cool kid down the road.
Season 1 was more Kid's story than Joe's, and that's understandable. Joe was just the voice of reason and not much else. She had her moments and place on the team for sure, but it wasn't her story yet. Which is why, after being chosen by Queen Jean to live up to her legacy, she sees this as her chance to be more than just a waitress. But deep down, she's just a teenager and still needs help. The problem was that the help she got was from a massive hypocrite who only cares about results. Queen Jean being awful was on purpose, and it works wonderfully to boost Joe's arc and finding what it takes to become a true leader. But deep down, you know Joe always has good intentions. Even now, when she rejects her own team for Krosh, you know it's just to help the universe and also to keep them safe. Doesn't change the fact that she's hurting them though, and that they're still her family in the end. Earlier in episode 3, Kid went to Joe to comfort her after the party operation went wrong, and told her that despite what Herodias is, he still believes in her and knows she'll do the right thing. But Joe replies that she thinks her mom doesn't believe in her, when that couldn't be more further from the truth. Her actions all stem from the fact that she doesn't believe in herself, which is why she isn't just taking the stones by herself, she's taking Krosh, who's a battle-hardened warrior. She's taking someone else who is more experienced than she is, all while taking the advice of someone else who is more experienced than she is. And all of this will eventually lead to her downfall. Flo calls out Jean for the way she's been training Joe, and even calls it brainwashing at one point, which is true, while Jean simply calls it guidance. The same exact guidance that she gave the survivors 5 who didn't survive. Flo points that out to her and how obviously her advice isn't good, as all it's good for is getting people killed. Interesting side note, this episode's only about 15 minutes long, which, as weird as that is, it's strangely perfect given what happens in it. So while Joe and Krosh fight Herodias, Kid goes on this milkshake bender in the background, which is pretty funny. But then it turns out Herodias can actually fight back using the various powers of the stones. But just when all hope seems lost, Krosh actually backstabs Joe and tries to take all of the rings for herself. Now, at first, I kinda didn't like this sudden betrayal since there really wasn't much build up to it. But the more I thought about it, it does help Joe realize her mistake in betraying her friends. Well, yeah, I still would have liked some build up to this moment. It still works enough for me, especially since it doesn't even matter considering Phantos just kills her outright. Yeah, he just fucking murdered her and doesn't even acknowledge it. She's dead. Again, I love it when a kid shows the balls to do shit like that. It's awesome. So Phantos gets all the stones and, out of sheer pettiness, decides to open a giant portal to Flo's diner, making it Herodias' next target. He then drops Joe into another portal where she's picked up by that alien from season 1. I like that they actually brought him back and gave him some closure on whether he got back to his family or not. I thought that was a nice touch, especially when it, again, ties into the central theme of the show, that heroes help, not hurt. The guy puts out a call that Flo's diner is in danger, and everyone who she's helped over the last few months all race to help her. I like that we actually got to see Flo care for these other aliens, not just from exposition, but from actual events in the first episode. Like this one alien who had an allergic reaction which Flo helped him out with, to even that alien mafia who Flo catered for. Joe was reminded through this the kind of good, caring person that her mom is. That just by being a good person, she managed to bring a whole universe of different races, cultures, and people together for a common goal. With a cup of compassion, a teaspoon of tenderness, an ounce of understanding, and mixed with care and kindness, you can bring anyone together. That's what it means to be a true hero, and to be a true leader. It's a very touching and wholesome scene where later Joe is able to call her mom and tell her just how much he means to her. We get this awesome battle with all these aliens using different weapons and techniques to fight Herodias, such as lasers, explosives, and even ramming into it with an excellent defrost. There's even this one moment where Joe goes against Jean's advice to let people know that their lives are more important than the mission, again showcasing just how much she's grown this season. There's even this really nice scene where Queen Jean acknowledges how she was wrong, and later even risks her life in order to help the heroes get their powers back. Most shows would have just made her super stubborn and never budge on the issue, but this show actually takes the time to have a character grow in a very natural and fulfilling way, even if it's just a side character like her. It's amazing. We even take the time to have Jean have this Vietnam flashback to the other survivors dying, and then she decides to use what's left of her power to save the refugees from episode 5, saying that it's the little people that mean the most. God damn, that is some tasty character development right there.
That is delicious. Finally. Some good fucking food.
It turns out that Herodias is full of stones of power, and now just about anyone can get any power they want. So Phantos throws our heroes into a portal, and sadly, Herodias destroys the diner. The heroes find themselves back on Earth, only for Herodias to appear right next to it. But as fortune has it, the others still have some spare stones of power, and interestingly enough, using the slime power, they manage to destroy Herodias and save the world.
I will not let you destroy my world!
how the slime power was always set up to be a joke, only to actually end up being the power that ends up saving the world. Again, showing that it's not the power, but the person wielding it. Now, how come giant chunks of Herodias don't just smash into the earth? Where did Phantos go? Well, don't think too hard about it, because that's the end of Season 2, and now Kid and his friends have to save the world again in Season 3. So, overall, a really damn good season. The animation was spectacular, the unique stories and set pieces for each episode were a lot of fun. Joe went from being my least favorite of the group to honestly perhaps my favorite now, with a great character arc about learning what it means to be a true leader, and having the sweet dynamic with her mom, and Queen Jean learning how she was wrong and how the way she taught her. Phantos is everything. I love this guy. He is such a fun and great villain who is the perfect balance of being both too pathetic and too powerful. A man-child who won't stop until he gets what he wants, and doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. Oh, the jokes I could make. While I still think overall Season 1 was the more compelling and interesting season, this was still a great follow-up that took a risk at having the main character not even be our main character. It was the voice of reason's side character who already didn't have much going on for them. It's just incredible. Season 2 of Kid Cosmic was just phenomenal. I cannot believe it is this good. Man, I can't wait to see how the final season goes. Given how the first two went, it has got to be absolutely incredible, and it's the weakest of the three. Like, yeah, it's got some problems, admittedly. By no means a bad season, but easily the weakest due to just how short it is. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I think Netflix was trying to shoo it out the door as fast as possible, just so they could get it over with ASAP. They wanted to start that purge right away so they could start saving money, or whatever the fuck they thought they were doing with their piss-poor business decisions. It's not the show's fault, it's noticeably weaker this season, at least to me. If this season had maybe just 1 or 2 more episodes, it probably would have been on par with Season 2. Maybe. But as it is, it struggles from some pretty bad pacing in these first few episodes. So, let's talk about the global heroes and how they're actually good at it now. So at the end of Season 2, Herodias was destroyed, and yet somehow only small pieces of Herodias fell to Earth. And alongside those pieces were stones of power, which means now anyone on Earth can find these stones and gain superpowers from them. So our local heroes are then recruited by the PPG. The PPG? Alright, who voices those girls? Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is why I love you, Craig. How much you want to bet this was some subtle jab at Cartoon Network for that shitty 2016 reboot of the Powerpuff Girls, which went out of its way to disrespect the original voice actors? Whether it is or not, it's an awesome reference and I am here for it. So the PPG, or Planet Protection Group, enlist our local heroes to find the lost stones of power and keep them out of the hands of evil. The PPG also gives them all the typical superhero gadgetry that they need, including fancy cars, jets, suits, and what would a superhero team be without an obligatory Stan Lee cameo?
Oh, I can't drive.
Yes, you can. You're Kid Cosmic. You can do whatever you want. Excelsior!
Okay, fine, it's not actually Stan Lee. We all know he's gone, sadly. But the joke still lands. At first, it seems like all of Kid's dreams are finally coming true. He has his old stone back, he's getting to save the day, and he's even fighting supervillains with his team who come right out of nowhere, interestingly enough. This includes a dog who finds an invisibility stone, a Lex Luthor-like villain named Big Boss, and even the biker guy from Season 1 comes back for revenge. Here the show begins to feel very villain of the week, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the show never even stops to ask the question, where's Phantos? Or where's Queen Jean? What happened to the Armada? Or those refugees? Suddenly, it just feels like any normal boring superhero show with generic gimmicks like giving the characters new suits and gadgets so they can sell toys in the real world. Or that the writers have now written themselves into a corner so they just repeat what already worked in the past by bringing up old villains like that biker guy. Suddenly, it feels like the show has lost all focus and become so disconnected with everything that's happened in the past without any acknowledgement of it. Almost like it's become a different show. Or maybe our heroes are somewhere else entirely. What did happen to Thanos? Or Queen Jean? How come Kid hasn't asked any of these questions? Or any of our heroes for that matter? Haven't any of them noticed how strange this all feels? Like how they're surprisingly, suddenly really good at being heroes? Or how Joe knew how to stop this one villain with a very specific thing that she didn't even know about until it just popped in her head magically? Suddenly the story keeps trying to branch out these different subplots with this mummy's curse, or this Atlantean who's in love with Joe, and of course, what do you think? A sudden appearance of a 14th Stone of Power. Because what else is gonna drag a plotline further than just by doing what the last season did, only slightly different? You can copy my homework, but just change it up so the teacher won't notice. Eventually, the pieces start to line up too conveniently for Joe's liking, so she goes off to see what's really going on. But in a weird twist, it turns out Papa G is also onto the fact that something's not right. After an intense and really fun fight with Papa G, he reveals that he recognizes everything from his old comics that he gave to Kid. And if all of it's coming true, then that means maybe a certain other event will happen as well. So yeah, all the perfect missions, all the gadgets, the recurring villains, it turns out it's all fake. Turns out the portal that Phantos threw them into was actually a fake fantasy world based around someone's deepest desires. Specifically, Kid's deepest desires. And suddenly, everything makes sense. The cool gear and mecha suit, the villain of the week adventures, the mystery of a sudden 14 stone, all of it stems from Kid's desire to be a superhero. Like from his favorite comic books. Suddenly, all of the references to superhero culture, like this Jimmy Olsen parody, the Stan Lee cameo, the references to a cinematic universe, hey, I know that guy! All of them suddenly have plot relevance as they led to this big twist that I genuinely didn't see coming. It's a great subversion of all of these tropes that a lot of superhero shows and comics run into, either due to writer fatigue or studio interference. You know, if you really think about it, this final season of Kid Cosmic could be seen as a middle finger to both Cartoon Network and Disney for the way those studios treated Craig in his past shows. Like how Powerpuff Girls was dragged on for way too long, or how Wonder Over Yonder was just unceremoniously ended despite Craig wanting to keep it going. The YouTuber Just Stop made a video going more in depth with how this show subverts pop culture references, and it's really good. I recommend you guys go check it out. I'm definitely not saying this just because it's a good YouTube channel that I like, and also because my Kid Cosmic video made a brief cameo in it or something.
It's a cartoon I've been a big fan of ever since it released back in 2021, though I haven't seen too many other fans making videos.
Who's that good-looking guy?
So like with Season 1, Papa G is lying to Kid to protect his feelings, and is just trying to make him happy. This is honestly kind of where my problems with the season start coming up. Despite the season's commentary on retreading old themes and such, it is a little weird that Papa G is doing this again when he should know by now that this is only going to end up hurting Kid in the long run. If he meets his parents again, then it won't be real for either of them. There's also the fact that Herodias and Phantos are still out there causing mayhem across the galaxy and stuff, so maybe they should get out of the fantasy world to stop them. That's also a thing as well. But surprisingly, Kid also began to suspect something. Of course, it's just another comic book trope where the government has a secret of some kind that they're hiding from their heroes. So Kid faces off against the PPG in order to see the truth.
Oops!
Okay, despite the season's weaknesses, the comedy is still really on point. So Kid enters the vault and finds, well, his parents. So despite Papa G having to learn the same lesson again, this is still a really powerful scene. More to the fact that it shows just how much Kid has really grown as a character himself, how he's now able to separate fiction from reality now. He rejects his fake parents in exchange for his new family and says,
I'd rather try and fail at something real than win at something fake.
his fake parents fade away, and so does the illusion simply because he wanted it to. On a side note, holy shit, are the end credits for this episode sad. My god.
Ding, hee hee, ding, ding, hee hee, ding, hee hee, ding, ding, hee hee.
Alert, alert, alert. Impending danger, danger. The death of Iris.
Oh, the fruits. I am dying.
What the hell is that?
Season 3, Episode 4 is, in my opinion, the worst episode of the show. It's honestly kind of tedious how everyone is in this hopeless state, save for Rosa. Like, really? I mean, sure, Joe and Kid want to fight at first, but eventually they lose hope as well. Meanwhile, we shift our focus to the refugees. The refugees with no character or even any names that I remember. Yay! It's not even the ones that we saw before in Season 2. It's a brand new group of little people who we've never even seen before. Like, huh? So, let me get this straight. You only have 6 episodes left in this season. You're in episode 4 of 6. And you want to suddenly shift the focus to this character that we've never even met? When there's already so many various characters to keep up with, you just want to pile on more? You really expect me to get invested in these assholes whose names I don't even care enough to look up? Why not just have the Armada show up again for flow? If you want to spend an episode of everyone feeling hopeless and lost, that's all fine and good. I just don't think you really have the time anymore for it. You spent half your season in that fantasy world, and now you have things that need to be brought up, questions that need answers. It's just becoming too much in too little time. I also don't buy how almost everyone has lost all hope at this point. They could always just land on Herodias and grab more stones from it and sneak up on Phantos. In fact, that ends up practically being the plan in the very next episode, so this one just feels tedious and just biding time while we wait for the series finale. I'll give it credit though, it does have this one great scene where Flo is mourning the loss of her diner. It's something that probably should have happened earlier this season, but it's still nice that we actually get it. Papa G offers her some advice and even tells her a story on how he got his stone of good luck. Honestly, this episode kind of bored me. I skip it every time and move on to the good stuff, which fortunately comes right up next. So Phantos, who now lives on Herodias simply because his mom kicked him out, which is pretty funny, uses the telekinesis stone to make Herodias go super fast. Why he doesn't just open a portal like he did before, it doesn't matter because he's heading to Earth. But the local heroes use their stones to try and destroy Herodias again.
Mommy, does this mean you like destroying planets and collecting stones of power too? I love you too, Mom.
Wait a minute. My mom hates me.
Aww. You know what? Let him destroy the Earth. Let him have this. Let the fucking guy blow up the Earth. He's blue. He's been through a lot. But during the final battle, Papa G is believed to be crushed by rocks, leading to this.
No. No, no, no. No, 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 no.
I love how it tied back to that backstory with Papa G, and how he tried to run away when he was just a kid too. Kid just lost everything and couldn't cope with it, so all he wanted to do was run away too. But he then realized he had something to stick around for. Papa G really means a lot to Kid, and he wouldn't know what to do if anything happened to him. So, obviously he's gonna die. They wouldn't have pulled this kind of gut punch out of nowhere unless something really bad was about to happen. They always do. So, in a weird twist of fate, just as Phantos is about to destroy the Earth, Herodias suddenly attacks him and drags him into the goo where he dies. Yeah, Phantos fucking dies as well. Which, honestly, I kind of have mixed feelings over. I mean, on the one hand, he was just a giant man baby, so I'm not sure he deserves such an awful way to go. But on the other hand, he not only murdered people himself, but he was also totally down with Herodias wiping out entire civilizations. So, yeah, if anything, yeah, Herodias being the one who takes him down is pretty fitting, all things considered. Although I still think he should have been allowed to destroy the Earth. So Herodias uses the power of insight to show its past to the local heroes. It's revealed here that Herodias was originally a planet where people came to heal and or rejuvenate themselves. However, an asteroid crashed into the planet, destroying it. A piece of the planet flew off into space that still has its power, and now the spirit of Herodias has been trying to heal itself, looking for that piece. This is actually a pretty crazy twist when you think about it. This whole time, Herodias was actually a victim in a way, unable to really see the destruction it was causing. It fought back against everyone mainly out of self-defense, and on top of all that, Phantos exploited it all just to achieve his own fantasy. But what I love the most about this twist is how it once again ties in well with the message of the show, that heroes help, not hurt. It all comes back around, doesn't it? Rather than just blow up Herodias and be done with it like they thought they did at the end of Season 2, now the goal is to find that missing piece so that Herodias can move on. But of course, they already have it. It turns out the G in Papa G doesn't stand for Grandpa, it stands for Great Grandpa, and that his lucky stone was keeping him alive and healthy for far longer than it should have. But now, in order to save Herodias and the Earth, he has to give it all up. All Papa G ever wanted was to make Kid happy, whether it was through noble intentions or helping him through the pain of losing his folks. Papa G was everything to Kid, and it was Kid who inspired him to make that choice.
Kid, you got your whole life ahead of you. I've had more than enough time, and then some. It's like my hero, Kid Cosmic, says. Heroes help, heroes sacrifice.
Papa G!
Herodias is healed and moving on. We'd best be moving on as well.
What's happening? Her powers are fading!
I guess I'm not as bright as I used to be.
Like the Jade, Grandpa! Papa G!
And we have one more episode left. And he's alive! Holy shit, I actually thought he didn't make it. I didn't cry. I want to make it clear to everyone. The only movie that makes me cry is Land for Time. That's it. No, Mufasa doesn't do shit for me. I didn't cry at Kid Cosmic. But I will acknowledge its ability to make others cry. So Papa G did in fact survive. The others have a funeral for all of those lost to Herodias, and after the government, or the real government, gives them a big fat check to keep their mouths shut about aliens, Flo is able to rebuild the diner. But after 6 whole months have passed, Kid is feeling down about things going back to normal. For a minute, he actually thinks they're back in the fantasy realm when a member of the PPG, or Pacific Power and Gas, appears at the diner for a health inspection. It's actually a really intriguing series finale for a superhero show, isn't it? Everyone's power is gone, but all the things they did for the universe still happened. Everyone they met and affected still exists, and the universe owes them a debt of gratitude. Kid is upset because he knows what it's like to be alone and stuck in the middle of nowhere, and he doesn't want Earth to feel that way anymore. There's no epic final battle or cliffhanger to leave us out on. It's just the characters having to move on from everything they've been through when Kid says that they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to pretend it never happened. They shouldn't pretend they weren't who they were. They can't just forget that. But the others are all trying to, and Kid is sick of it. So in disgust, he runs off, just like he did in Season 1, even going back to where he was burning his old comic books. But then he notices a fire at the diner and goes to check up on everyone. And lo and behold, the others all agree. So after building a satellite, all the aliens from across the galaxy come to the diner, effectively putting it on the map for everyone to see. And none of it would have been possible without Kid Cosmic. Hot damn. So, yeah, Season 3 had some problems overall. It definitely struggles from some pacing issues here and there. Probably my biggest complaint is how sudden the shift was to go back from Joe to Kid in the very beginning. I mean, in context of the show, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for the fantasy world to be around Kid's desires, does it? Shouldn't it be about Joe's fantasy, since Phantos made it specifically for her? I just thought it was really sudden how the focus just suddenly went back to Kid just like that. But with all the problems I have said, it was still a pretty damn good ending. Kid Cosmic isn't like other superhero shows. It doesn't put a lot of emphasis on things like epic battles and plot twists. It focuses more on the spirit of what a hero truly is on the inside, the values that they're supposed to represent. That at the end of the day, heroes help, not hurt. The way the show subverts typical comic book and superhero tropes was done brilliantly, not only with the jokes and character interactions, but with the themes and lessons as well. I said this before in my Season 1 video, but Kid Cosmic really is up there with shows like Amphibia and The Owl House in terms of quality. It's just that damn good. And while I am sad that it's over, given what would happen literally a month later, it might be for the best. It wrapped itself up the best way that it could. It was fun, funny, beautifully animated, surprisingly emotional and heartfelt, a great commentary on superhero culture and the impact that it has on the real world. Guys, what else is there to say? Kid Cosmic? Hot damn. Ah, that was the ticket. Man, you know what? I really should watch more TV shows that I love. Maybe BoJack Horseman? Or, ooh, how about this weird as hell Troll Hunters knockoff called Daniel Spellbound? Yeah, I bet you guys have never even heard of that show. Or maybe I can watch...
You guys went on your own mission?
No, we were on a date.
Oh, is that what missions are called now? Dates?
No!